I want to share a story with you right now. And this story is of my son and daughter. This is Marcus and Bella. This is actually their adoption picture. You see, Bella was 6 months old when she came to us, and Marcus was 1.5 years. They are bio-siblings. Bella had 16 broken bones when she came to us. Her mother had crushed every finger in her hand, had taken a 2x4 and smashed her feet. Didn't like the way she was crying one day, so she popped her femurs out of place. She took her right arm and dislocated her shoulder. She gouged her eyes with her thumbs. She took a meat mallet to the middle of her forehead. She tore practically all of her right earlobe off. She punched her in the stomach, breaking 3 of her ribs, one that punctured her lung. My daughter was so hypervigilant when she came to us at 6 months old that she would not smile, she would not frown, she would not cry. She had already been taught at 6 months old not to make a sound or a move because that meant pain. It took a long time to get Bella to show emotion. It took a long time of occupational, physical therapy to help her walk and use her hands again. At this picture right here, she is about 1.5 years, almost 1 year and 8 months old. That's wonders, isn't it? My son was 1.5 years when he came to us and locked in closets and not fed. He had hair down to the middle, about past his waist. He wasn't very verbal. He understood not many words, but the words he did understand were in Spanish. And the first foster home they put him in was an Anglo-speaking family. And so, poor baby was freaking out. And so, it's very important that we find out, being trauma-informed. You may have already heard that word, trauma-informed care. But Marcus didn't like the dark, and he still doesn't. He doesn't like closed, confined spaces. You may go to the movies and have your bucket of popcorn and drink. But when Marcus has his little kid pack popcorn and drink and cookie, as soon as he walks into that theater, he'll go. And for that split second, he is back in a closet, completely locked in darkness. And we have to tell him, because his therapist is wonderful. And he's still in therapy till today. He's 9 years old today. And his therapist has taught us to ask, Marcus, what's your plan? And he'll start looking. And he'll say, there's a door over there, it says exit. And we can go out this way, Mama. And I said, that's right, baby, those are your plans. And then he'll say, the therapist has taught us, you ask him, Marcus, where do you want to sit? Give him power and give him control. And so he'll start looking and we'll sit wherever we sit, which is usually at the end because he wants to be able to get out as quickly as possible. So when we hear people say, oh, they were so young, they'll never remember. They may not remember the actual abuse, but his brain certainly does remember the darkness, certainly remembers the fear, and certainly remembers how uncomfortable and awkward it is. And so I just want you to know by sharing this picture to get you to understand that even though Bella's story is like, oh, you'll see a picture at the end and she's a survivor, man. They both are. But there's nothing wrong with my daughter today, physically, mentally, except that she needs glasses. And she pitched a fit this year to get glasses. But my son still has attachment problems. My son still has anger problems. My son still has a lot of scars from what he went through from birth to 1.5 years. And so the children that suffer from emotional neglect, the long-term consequences are far worse. And so when we start looking at your ACE score, let's really pay attention to where your life is coming from. I want to show you a real quick video about toxic stress. This is from the universe. It's not in your in your PowerPoint. But if you get my card at the end and you want the link, I will send you the YouTube link for it. But this is from the University of Harvard, who has done a study on trauma in early childhood. And that is a really big place where we're going. Trauma in early childhood, a lot of people think, oh, it doesn't really affect, but it is growing. And so I really want, these are very short snippets. This is a 5-part series in their video series, but this one is important.
Learning to deal with stress is an important part of healthy development. When experiencing stress, the stress response system is activated. The body and brain go on alert. There's an adrenaline rush, increased heart rate, and an increase in stress hormone levels. When the stress is relieved after a short time, or a young child receives support from caring adults, the stress response winds down and the body quickly returns to normal. In severe situations, such as ongoing abuse and neglect, where there is no caring adult to act as a buffer against the stress response stays activated. Even when there is no apparent physical harm, the extended absence of response from adults can activate the stress response system. Constant activation of the stress response overloads developing systems, with serious, lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Over time, this results in a stress response system set permanently on high alert. In the areas of the brain dedicated to learning and reasoning, the neural connections that comprise brain architecture are weaker and fewer in number. Science shows that the prolonged activation of stress hormones in early childhood can actually reduce neural connections in these important areas of the brain at just the time when they should be growing new ones. Toxic stress can be avoided if we ensure that the environments in which children grow and develop are nurturing, stable, and engaging.
How many of you have heard the word acute stress, right? Acute trauma, and then chronic, right? Acute meaning something that happened. You were in an accident, a car accident, right? That happened at that moment. The fact is that it's not reoccurring. The fact that it could be chronic is that it's been going on, right? And so when we look at Marcus, and I'm going to use him as an example, but when we look at Marcus, Marcus was in chronic stress. He was in that toxic stress already. We know, and this is based off of the University of Harvard's research, we know that 700 neurons are being made every second in the brain from birth to 3 years old. So imagine that. Those neurons which help create reasoning and learning are not being made every time some type of stress is happening. And so when you saw the end picture of the brain and you saw how that gray matter started coming in, it's because nothing was being made. Therefore, when I look at my son, and the reason I started doing all this research on trauma was because I wanted to learn more about my son. I wanted to learn more about my daughter and how I could help them. And so what I found is, you see, Marcus, he didn't know how to express his emotions. He didn't learn. For a year and a half, he did not have anyone pick him up, talk to him, or anything. And therefore, he did not create that bond of communication. He did not create trust or mistrust. Okay? He was literally, if you talk about that fight or flight mode, he was literally in flight mode that quickly turned into fright. Constant fright. Today, Marcus is not at this fright level, but he is certainly right here still in fright level, because we still have a lot of work to do with Marcus. We still have a lot of help to offer to Marcus. People think, oh, they can just change right away. No, they can't. And therefore, we have to understand that with Marcus, it was, tell me your emotion, even to today. Yesterday, he sounded so adult-like, right? We're doing homework, and I'm just like, oh. He goes, Mama? I said, yes. He goes, you look and sound frustrated. Are you? I started laughing. And I said, Marcus, I said, do we ask you that a lot? And he goes, no. He goes, you ask me, how am I feeling? And I said, you're right, baby. I said, I am a little frustrated. I'm sorry. I said, let me give you my full attention. And he'll like, I know I have it. And I said, but I know it's working. Does that make sense? I know that by asking him, Marcus, tell me how you're feeling. And we have to get that emotions chart. You know, are you mad? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? To learn every type of emotion. Because for him, everything was anger. Everything was kicking and throwing things. And it's like, look, you have to learn to talk to me. And so that's where I want you to kind of understand. Those neurons are very important. And so when you start seeing about how we're starting, and when I say about how I'm talking about San Antonio and Bexar County as a community. We are. Nonprofit organizations like myself and like Clarity are paying attention at the early childhood moment and how important and crucial it is to get individuals to understand how important it is. How important it is to get early educators who work at centers to understand how important their role is in working with these kiddos, because they spend the bulk of the time with our young kiddos every day. How teachers need to know about trauma and how it impacts these kiddos. And so, as we move on, understand, going back to these developmental differences, let's look at kiddos who have suffered from abuse and what you may see at their level when we're looking at the cognitive and emotional side. You may see regressive behaviors, separation fears. It is not uncommon that a young toddler who has been, Marcus suffered great separation fear. Why? I have someone, for 6 months I stayed home with them. I stopped working at CASA. We adopted them and I was like, you know, they need 24/7. And so I stopped working. And I remember when we first started taking them to daycare, Marcus had huge separation anxiety. Why do you think? Afraid I'm going to leave him, right? Wait a minute, I finally have something good. Don't leave me. You know, that's kind of what was happening. And so, yeah, you may see that. You may see some of these babies, you may think, oh, this baby is just so well behaved. But you look at this baby and you see the baby just kind of, even though that person's going, hi, they're over here. Is that child really a well-behaved baby, or are they doing something to cope with stress? Okay? Physical aches and pains. And sometimes they may have those somatic symptoms, right? Somatic being, oh, my tummy hurts. I know I'm dying of cancer. I have a tumor. But there's nothing wrong. Okay? And so you may see some of these. Crying and irritability. For babies who can't express themselves, right? Are they going to cry? Yes. Fearful avoidance and public reactions, behavior problems such as tantrums, poor concentration and difficulty learning. These are what we may see in our preschoolers. With Marcus, and to this day, Marcus needed speech therapy. He didn't talk to many people, so he had a speech impediment. And right now, his hardest problem is he is a great reader. He is an awesome reader, but he hates reading. I saw a librarian today at an elementary school. I went to Cable Elementary to do a training with Gladys, and I looked at the librarian and I said, how can I get him to read? He just doesn't want, she goes, so we went through all these books, and I was like, no, we've already been there. But I do believe that I'm coming to a conclusion of what the problem is. The problem is that he's a great reader. The problem being, he doesn't understand the words. So how can a book be interesting if you don't know what a word means? Therefore, I don't want to read. And so these are things where we have to process. Now, here I am telling you all this, right, as a mom. But imagine how difficult it really is for a parent who has no clue like I am. No clue. And how you may just want to say, why can't my kid just behave? But if we really don't know much about trauma and stress, you think that they're going to understand what's really going on? And here comes the problem. In our elementary kids, you may see sadness and crying, irritability and aggression, nightmares, behavior and academic problems, concentration problems, eating and sleeping changes. How many of you know that most elementary boys don't sleep well at night? Do you know that? I just found that out. I had to share it because I'm amazed. Because truly, Marcus has problems sleeping at night. Attention-seeking behaviors and just plain withdrawal. We had a problem. Marcus started 3rd grade. Second week of school, teacher calls. We have a problem. Can we have a parent-teacher conference? I'm like, thanks. Right? I get in and I go, okay, I'm here. What's the problem? Marcus has a problem with humming. I said, come again? Marcus has a problem with humming. Marcus started private school this year. In private school, there's only 9 kids in his class. And she likes to work in complete silence. Do you think my son can work in complete silence? Therefore, when it got silent, Marcus would hum. And it would be a problem for the other kids. So her and I together had to come up with what can be a possible solution. So I said, if I got him a stress ball, could he use that stress ball if he got anxious? And she goes, yes. We've not had a problem with humming. But again, it's problem solving. Instead of just saying, you need to stop humming. Let me think back about my kid and everything that's happened to my kid and why he may want to hum. And sometimes we don't do that. And sometimes that's what we need to take with parents, is to take them and to get them to really think about what is the root of the problem. Does that make sense? Okay. Adolescents, they're similar to the adult response when it comes to trauma. We've got feelings of shame and guilt, increased risk-taking behaviors, delinquent behaviors, self-injury. My good old buddy, Kathy Cunningham, she is about the best guru to self-injury that I know. She truly is. She has taught me so much about it. You may see substance abuse and running away. But these are real issues that we see in kids. When we look at kids who are almost tweens and teens, and you see a lot of sexual activity, this may be a reason that they're showing aggressive sexualized behaviors, and that situation and problem can be because this child started out as a sexually reactive child. And so we look into that and see what may be the chronic problem of that. But there's a great book about aggressive sexualized behaviors called Vandalized Love Maps that really gets you to understand. People want to just dismiss this young child as just being very promiscuous. Yes, she or he is. But they will find mutual partners, and they're not looking for love. By no means. They are looking for an attachment. So this isn't because I want a boyfriend and girlfriend. No, these individuals are mutually having sex, and they're bouncing from one partner to another partner. And so this lack of an adult attachment is the reason why they're doing it. But if you really want a good book to read, and I know you have all the time in the world, Vandalized Love Maps is a really good book to look into really understanding why.